I speak tonight for the dignity of man and the destiny of democracy. What happened in Selma is part of a far larger movement which reaches into every section of America. This bill will strike down restrictions to voting in all elections.
Today we celebrate our noble tradition by signing our newest civil rights law, the National Voter Registration Act of 1993.
Today we renew a bill that helped bring a community on the margins into the life of American democracy. I am proud to sign the Voting Rights Act Reauthorization and Amendments Act of 2006.
Young people are fired up about the 2008 election.
Large numbers of African Americans are turning up at the polls in what could be a historic turnout among the nation's largest minority voting group.
11 o'clock on the East Coast, we can report history.
Barack Obama is projected to be the next president of the United States of America.
This mathematically makes no sense to me.
Some of these
cheating has happened. I don't believe it. I think this is voter fraud.
Several new voting laws recently enacted in the United States.
The Republicans will take control of the House of Representatives.
Voter ID, which is going to allow Governor Romney to win the state of Pennsylvania. Done.
Experts found that African-American voters were nearly twice as likely to lack voter ID.
What we've seen this year is by far the most significant rollback of voting rights since the Jim Crow era.
We cut Obama by 5%, and I think that probably voter ID had helped a bit in that.
The U.S. Supreme Court today took the teeth out of a law enacted nearly 50 years ago.
Since 1965, the Voting Rights Act has policed voting discrimination, but today's decision effectively puts it on hold.
At issue, a decades-old provision in the law that requires 9 states, mostly in the South, to get approval from the federal government before changing voting laws or procedures.
The ACLU of Wisconsin filed that lawsuit today, calling the state's voter ID law unconstitutional.
Today, the ACLU filed a lawsuit challenging recent cuts in voting hours.
It seems like we're playing like a game of whack-a-mole right now. Every time we whack down something like a voter ID law, some new tactic pops up.
From Texas to Virginia, state and local governments have taken steps to require voter identification, eliminate same-day registration, and to limit voting hours and locations.
Federal appeals court has struck down a North Carolina voter ID law. Civil rights groups have slammed the law, claiming it discriminates against minorities and the poor.
They said it was clear that the intent was to target African Americans with, quote, surgical precision.
I think most people recognize the Republicans have taken over the legislature and they want to have structural options that make it more likely that their voters come out and others that don't.
Well, I think Hillary Clinton is about the weakest candidate the Democrats have ever put up. And now we have photo ID, and I think photo ID is going to make a little bit of a difference as well.
We just got new metrics in. Donald J. Trump is the president of the United States elect.
The new Presidential Commission on Election Integrity, established after President Trump, who lost the popular vote, insisted 3 to 5 million people voted illegally.
State after state can't point to a single instance of in-person voter impersonation, not one.
Again, you don't have any hard physical evidence that this happened.
We've seen time and time again, when Republicans can't win outright as far as votes, then they resort to what many would call cheating.
We have to go through extra hurdles to prove where we reside with our tribal IDs that have to be changed now to have physical addresses.
Voter suppression is an issue all over the United States. And right now, one of the most prominent examples is in Georgia.
He's running against you for governor. Yes. And overseeing state elections.
Yes,
so,
he is both the player and the umpire.
Voters agreed to restore voting rights to convicted felons.
The new law has given an estimated 1.4 million people who've completed their sentences the right to vote in the next election.
Not only do I see myself differently, but the state now sees me differently. The state now sees me as somebody that is worthy to have a voice again.
I really feel like a citizen, you know, not just a person, but I would feel like an American.
The Florida Senate passed a bill Friday that would require formerly incarcerated people with felony convictions to repay all fines and fees to courts before their voting rights are restored.
The ACLU announced it's suing the state over the new law, claiming it guts Amendment 4.
The Supreme Court set to hear oral arguments this week on whether the Trump administration can include a very controversial citizenship question on the 2020 census.
Challengers say the question could lead to millions of people not responding to the census, and that could affect how federal money is allocated and how many representatives each state gets in Congress.
The justices in this ruling saying the Census Bureau cannot go forward with putting this citizenship question on the 2020 census.
The history of democracy in this country has never been a simple story of linear progress. We have overcome every moment of backlash, and we will overcome this one and move closer to a democracy in which everyone can participate and be treated equally.
On securing the vote, on ensuring that we all have a free and fair opportunity at elections, to have jobs, justice, and an equal opportunity at the American dream. And there's no better person to talk about the work the Reverend Jackson has done on the vote than Reverend Jesse Jackson. Joining us now is Reverend Jackson on the line. Reverend Jackson, how are you?
You know, Robert, thank you. I used to say, according to our power, our name would change. We had no power. We were nigger. We could vote a little Negro, then black, then African American. The more power we got, the more dignified our names got. Because we become powerful enough to protect ourselves. Dr. King never saw a black man in Atlanta, or Savannah, or Augusta, or Tallahassee, or Selma, Montgomery, or Birmingham. The fact is, we were moving politically in ways that's astonishing. We can't give up on political empowerment. Focus a lot these days on police. The police patrol, they don't control. Politicians control. In 1968, after Dr. King was killed, Robert Kennedy was killed, and the insurrection, the mayor said, shoot to kill. Other mayors took his lead. There was no black killed in this insurrection. Because our mayors are more civil. They came from our people. So I tell you, the right to vote is a very powerful weapon. No, violence is a weapon. Violence is not a weapon against the most violent nation on earth. No, violence is a weapon, and voting is a weapon. I submit to you that this time around, in Black Lives Matter, white folks, the constitutional right to vote. Constitutional right to vote. So our record numbers in September, we can defeat Trump and take our nation in another direction.
And on that point, you know, in the recent weeks, we've seen the passing of John Lewis, the passing of C.T. Vivian, earlier this year, Dr. Lowry. Can you kind of talk about what they meant to you and what they meant to this cause of voting and civil rights that we're still fighting for today?
So we get Charles Evans. When Medgar was killed in 1963, he was selling before the March on Washington. Charles left West Side Chicago and went to Mississippi. He was the voice, the man with the courage. And the first black mayor in history of Mississippi, Fayette County, Fayette, Mississippi. So we miss Charles Evans as well. But Lowry meant so much to us. He had been here for 27 years. He had working back roads of the South. Much of what we have now is because of Reverend Lowry. C.D. Vivian, by the way, you see in 1947, against Montgomery, there was a demonstration in Macomb, Illinois. Desegregated the facilities in 47. He was the longest distance runner, C.T. was. C.T. was. There to Montgomery, there to Birmingham, Selma. C.T. never stopped. John Lewis he's just John Lewis. We met in the fall of 1960. I go to jail that summer, July 1960. Then I used to put a library in Greenville, South Carolina. We hooked up at A&T at that time. And we were in and out of marches the rest of the 60 years. The day John and Dr. King spoke in Washington, in Texas, across the Florida, up to Maryland, we could use a single public toilet. We couldn't take pictures along the state capitol. Dogs could. Black soldiers sat behind Nazi prisoners of war on American military bases at that time. We kept fighting. So about 1964, we had the public accommodation bill. John hitched his horse to It was big lifting. He could have done his own thing outside of the movement. He did the Marshall, the foundation, was a policy fund. The Third Marshall, Dr. King responded to her. John responded to Dr. King, and he never stopped. He did it. John Lewis did it. He fought the public conviction bill, paid the price, jailing 45 times. Went to Congress, became its conscience. African American Museum is in Washington because of John Lewis, for example. Now we're trying to get the Voting Rights Act restored. Our heroes, but we got to go a step beyond that. We got to fight for the constitutional right to vote. Constitutional right to bear arms, to have guns, not the constitutional right to vote. You have 50 separate states, not equal elections. We have one national election. It's coherent. You have a Georgia standard and a New York standard. We have one side of voting. So I hope the Black Lives Matter will turn this anguish in demonstration into power. You can have 2 senators in Georgia this year. Well, remember the numbers were 35% black, Latino, progressives, youth. We have 2 senators out of Georgia, 1 out of South Carolina, North Carolina, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Colorado. If we focus on political empowerment, our lives will matter because we'll make it break presidents. We'll make it break the Senate. They're time who's on the Supreme Court. We have the power to remain focused and disciplined.
And last thing, earlier we had a caller who suggested that voting is ineffective, voting doesn't matter, and said we should all try to go back to Africa instead. What do you say to people who don't believe in the power of the vote?
Well, the young man was killed in Atlanta a month ago. His name shot down.
Rashard Brooks.
Yeah. Paul Howard had him indicted in 3 days. If we elect him with the vote, that wouldn't have happened without Paul Howard. In Minnesota, when George Floyd was killed, I went to see the county attorney. He said he couldn't deal with the police because of the police laws. We kicked it over to Keith Ellison. Keith indicted all 4 of them in 1 day. He's a state 5% black with a coalition vote. He had the power to put the man in jail to kill George Floyd. The vote is also power. They have the mayors in Montgomery and Atlanta and Selma and Birmingham, Richmond, Augusta. That means so much to us. All of us steps in the right direction. So can you imagine when Emmett Till was killed? They knew who killed the killer. The jury set to kill him free. Right asked the jury, why did you set him free? She said, we couldn't imagine a white man going to jail for killing a nigger. We had the bound on the jury. We couldn't hang the jury. We can protect ourselves. The guy who killed Emmett Till was found convicted 4 years later. He make evidence killed 4 years later. The vote gives rights to several juries. You elect sheriffs, you elect mayors, legislators, you can change laws. You can negotiate for power. Now, we go back to Africa if we want to. We have a right to go where we choose to go. We're free to challenge, to travel. We made this country the strongest country in the world. And we should demand our repair for damage done to us here. Leverage America to change the world. We're going to Africa. Not a guarantee, but we're African Americans. We're not Africans, we're not Americans, we're Africans. We're Negroes, not Negroes. We're new people. And so to go there, you're just seen as strangers. Stay where we are, fight back. This is win 2 Senate seats in Georgia, South Carolina, and Mississippi. Send Trump home, packing.
Thank you so much, Reverend Jess. I think that is the message that we all need. Stay where you at and fight back. Thank you.
Well, let me tell you, if you want to help RainbowPush.org, we need your help. Join Push today, RainbowPush.org. Please join today, okay?
Yes, and y'all please do that. Reverend Jess has instructed me to get 1,000 new members in Atlanta, so y'all head on over to RainbowPush.org and help your boy out. I enjoy being on payroll. So thank you so much, Reverend Jackson.